Hello again guys, and welcome to another video on how to draw a cherry. I'm using Polychromos for this because I brought myself a set last Christmas and I've only just got around to using them. I also use a Mars Black Deal and Light Fast as well because, you know, I love that pencil, so I'll use it in everything that I ever draw. And it turned out awesome, by the way, so let's get stuck into the tutorial. Okay, so first off I'm just drawing my outline, and the colour I'm using is light cadmium red, and it's the lightest colour I'm going to be using on this cherry, so I've decided to do the outline like that. Normally I'd use a pencil, but for purposes of this video, so you can see what I'm doing, I've done it in colour pencil. It shouldn't really make a difference. I've drawn the stem in it as well, you know, the thing the cherry dangles off. That might affect the colour when I shade that in later, but we'll get to that. I think I did rub out some of the stem. I'm also blocking out where my really harsh lighting will be because I want that to stay white. Leave the white of the paper, which is always best if you want harsh lighting. And then when I'm done with the outline, I'm going to shade the whole thing in the same colour, because when I add the darker reds on top of them, they'll blend together, and then you can start the layering process and get a nice smooth transition between the two. The next two colours that I used was Deep Red and Alizarin Crimson, and I kept this mainly to the outer edges of the cherry, pushing in more of the Deep Red towards the centre, and then when I was done with that I went back in with the light cadmium red in the middle mainly, because that's where it's reflecting that lighter colour more, pushing into that deep red. And then when I've done that, I load up the deep red again and we go back and forth like that until we get that nice smooth transition between the two. And as you can see, I'm doing that right now. I'm sticking to the outer edges of the cherry, pushing into that light cadmium red, going back and forth. This takes a long time, but it's essential for a smooth transition. I'm also going around all them harsh highlights I was talking about, and it's essential as well that you stick to the reference and what it's telling you, because it looks like as well this cherry's been washed, so it's quite shiny and wet and there's little water droplets on it and all that stuff, so I want to keep that in the drawing because it'd be more eye-catching and appealing when it's finally finished. You know, just really follow your reference and you can't really go wrong. Also in my reference photo, it looks like someone's pushed their fingernail or something into the centre of the cherry. It's a blemish. I wanted to keep that on my drawing, makes it more realistic at the end of the day. And because they've done that, there'll be a colour change because there's an indent in the cherry surface, so that will cast light differently. You have to create a shadow, so you can actually shade them parts in that would emphasize your details towards the end. So this is in the middle of my cherry, right bang in the middle, and the only way you could do that is by pushing that deep red through the center of that light cadmium red. And then later on in the video you'll see that I start adding blacks and magenta to really set off that indent. So the next colour up that I used, and it is an optional one, that's olive green yellowish. And it's optional because sometimes when I draw I'll pick unusual colours to put on top of other colours because they can create a darker version of that colour. I did see a slight bit of olive in the cherry as I was looking at the reference photo, but I didn't use too much of it, and I only used it on one side of the cherry. And what it did was it made that alizarin crimson and deep red go just a little bit darker, slightly olive coloured. And it's optional because it's something that you wouldn't normally do, but I'm just saying that just try it on your artwork and see what happens. You know, be surprised what it can do. And also I started using magenta, and magenta is a brilliant colour for making reds really vibrant. So I found this a lot with my drawings, where before I actually started using magenta, I put my reds down, and when I wanted them to go darker I'd use Mars Black black, and it wouldn't really work. You get a nice dark red once it started blending, but sometimes it was too dark or it got too muddy. And then I put magenta on top of it, and all your oranges and reds just like really pop off the page. So yeah, try magenta, it's a safe bet, but also just grab that olive green and have a go. You can always rub it out after. With one side of the cherry done now, I've decided to move on to the other side, and this side is more cast in shadow, so I've decided to use a combination of magenta and black. And the magenta is the pencil that looks like it's purple, but it's not actually purple. And I'm just going back and forth, magenta black, magenta black. Also, the reflection that I left, it's not harsh white, it was more like an ambient light maybe being reflected off a wall or something. And I used a colour called Sanguine to shade over that, because it was like used in skin tones, it's very orangey, and that really worked out for it. So I just ended up with like a nice orangey ambient light, because the cherry's red obviously, so it worked. Also, now you can see that I'm emphasising them indents that I said where the fingernail would be, and I've used again right in the centre a sliver of black and then magenta around it to emphasise that deep red that I left earlier, and that's what's casting that really nice shadow. It'll make it more realistic by the time all the details are put in. Now I've laid down some of them darker tones, it's time to lighten them up a bit with the ballpoint pen rubber. You've seen this in previous videos, it's the same one. It's really good at removing coloured pencil. It won't take it back to the white of the paper, but it will remove some of them darker colours, and the colours that are underneath, like that light cadmium red, will be more emphasised. I'm doing this mainly about the indent in the middle, because if I do this, it will make that indent more vibrant, more in your face, and you'll notice it more, again making it more realistic. I should probably do a video on the best rubbers to use with coloured pencil. It's a video for the future, maybe I'll do it. But I'm also on the darkest side, there's a lot of, like I said previously, some water drops, so you can use it also to push that dark red towards the edge of where the water drop would be, making it lighter. You can also see me using a scalpel to lightly scratch off some of the coloured pencil back to the paper, and this is going to be the edge of them water drops, because they are reflecting the light just as harsh as the light on the other side of the cherry. So you just see me lay down a massive line of black around all the cherry, and that's not me doing that, that's on the reference photo, and it makes it look super saturated, which I love. I love drawing stuff that's super saturated. All my work is pretty much super saturated. And how I've made it work is basically on the edges of where you lay down the black, I've coloured in magenta and deep red, and it'll work with any colour, greens, blues or whatever. And what you're doing is you're feathering that black, the edge of the black, it's softening it, and it allows the illusion of that black becoming part of the transition towards the red, towards the orange. But you need to like pick your colours right. So if you're picking a black, you could probably use that olive green, yellowish that I used earlier. If you're using greens, you go from dark blue to lighter blues from the black. Do the best you can, but it'll work with every colour. I do it every time because I love doing super saturated artwork. So just a quick note on the stem of the cherry, which on the reference photo it's quite blurred out, a bit like a DSLR effect type of deal going on, so you can't really see it, and I've kept it that way. I used a cream, a light yellow glaze and a light green, and that's it. I didn't do much else. I kept the light green to the edges and the cream in the middle. It's dead simple. And then I moved on to the drop shadow of the cherry, and because it's, like I say, it's been washed, it's sitting in a pool of water, if you can see that at the bottom. So you've got a harsh reflection right under the cherry, that bit of white, and it's kind of, you can see like the pool spraying out at the side, and this is casting a slight grey shadow. And now I've done this is, like I told you before, I shaded it in black, and then I used a rubber. I used a gum rubber this time, not the ballpoint pen rubber, but they're just as good. Have a look at them as well if you can. And when I rubbed it, it put it back to a grey. So you can see me go from a black to a grey, going lighter and lighter and lighter, and the light is coming from the cherry's left hand side, your right, which is casting the shadow on the other side, and I've emphasised this by drawing in a light grey. Okay, so right now you're probably saying to yourself, hang on a minute, how did you add all them little tiny white highlights? And I used a opaque watercolour paint called Gouache, or Gouache, however you want to pronounce it. I'll call it Gouache because it's easier, and a cocktail stick. And I've used a cocktail stick because it goes to a really fine point, and providing you haven't got a big massive blob on the end of that cocktail stick, you can add little tiny highlights of white paint. And that's how I did it. You don't want to overdo it. It's also really good for star fields as well, if you're into drawing space and stuff. I could do a video on that as well. And all I've done is, I've looked at the reference, and on the reference where these little tiny dots are, from it reflecting the water droplets and other things, I've just added little blobs of paint. So the cherry's finished. It took me about 2.5 to 3 hours to do, and it's not bad considering it's my first go with Polychromos, to be honest with you. I really like them. So that's a grab for them doing light fast sometimes, you know, that Mars Black, I needed it in the end, so I haven't come completely away from the doing light fast. And I'm just removing the tape right now so I can give you a closer look with the camera, so you can see what it looks like from different angles and stuff, and it turned out awesome. I'm really happy with it. If you like this video, please like, subscribe and comment, and thank you very much for watching.